on the show today, Amrit Sandhu. So Amrit, leadership coach, purpose coach, fellow podcaster. I was on his show and I was actually really impressed. The guy actually listened. He was in his body. One of the most enthusiastic I've ever met on a podcast. High energy, man. I don't know how we're going to do this. Like, it's late at night here and early in Australia. So I've genuinely you're someone I just want to be mates with as well. So I'm genuinely looking forward to this. So Amrit, welcome.
Oh, Mark, it is such a treat and a pleasure to be here, brother. Thank you so much. And like you said, it was such a treat to have you on the Inspired Evolution podcast. And yeah, I had such a fun time doing that episode. So it's a real,
It was a good
it's
one.
a real treat to have the shoe on the other foot, man. You gave so much in that episode that I'll humbly admit that I'm a bit intimidated.
No, I've been listening to you all day. You've got some great stuff to offer. Listen, let's start with your story. How did you get into what you do? You've got a bit of a story there. Like, how did you get into it?
Yeah, so you're probably asking around the leadership and life coaching stuff. So for me, the key thing that that drove me there was, it's a bit of a long story, but it was career misalignment. For a long time, I did what most people do. And we're sort of fed this societal story, which is, hey, if you do really well at school, you get really good grades. If you get really good grades, you get a really good opportunity to potentially go to university or pick up a trade. I went to university, and being of Indian heritage, I kind of had four options when I went to university. It was, either do medicine or either become an engineer or either become a lawyer or a complete failure.
I definitely want to talk about the cultural stuff.
Yeah, so there was this real cultural program, but that's just, Indian culture. But then there's also this, even in the Western culture, it's, there's this push to sort of get to university, and that's what all your friends and cohort and peers are doing. And touch wood, I struggled with university for the first half of it, and the second half, I absolutely smashed it. And, came out of university completely, there wasn't any award, touch wood, that I could have received that was higher, basically. So that was quite amazing to receive that. But then I got into this incredible opportunity, by all means and measures, in, working as in project management, in construction and engineering here. And I remember the first day I went to my job, and I'd had an episode of depression for about 6 years prior, which is why I struggled with the first half of uni. And so one of the things that came out of that journey was meditation. Another thing was real clear, like an understanding of my values. And I remember the first day I went into my work and I met sort of the regional director, the second in charge, the CEO. And I remember looking at him and I was like, wow, this guy is like not who I want to be.
Right. I stay here, I'm going to be him. Was that the case?
Well, it was interesting, right? Because in my, I guess, adolescent naivety, I've always been Mr. Inspired Evolution in my heart, right? And so I felt like I was here to be the change that I wanted to see in the world. And so I was like, let's go along and see how this goes, But I was very clear that this person does not embody the values that, that I had worked so hard to install in myself to overcome my depression, let's put it that way. And so that was quite a journey to sort of say, okay, I'm going to be the change I wish to see in this organization. And surely the next generation will be different. And every generation is different. But after about grinding along for 7 odd years, I realized that actually it wasn't working for me. And the interesting thing was, the people that were my inspirations were people like yourself, helping others in service, coaches, speakers, authors, living a life of massive impact in service and serving something that, just meant so much to them. And it sounds really like obvious in this particular juncture in the conversation, but all roads were mapping to me becoming, you climb the corporate ladder. But that wasn't my inspiration. Like, I wasn't inspired to be that bloke. I was inspired by all these people outside of this white picket fence lane, which is get the good job, then, build a family, get a nice house, get a nice car. And then finally, when you retire and you're not able to move your body as well as you were when you were 30 or 40, then you go live your life. Then you can travel and all this stuff. And I was
dangling in front of you. It's always
and I was just like, this doesn't like, this is not what I'm inspired to be, but yet this is the path that I'm on. And I think a lot of us are doing, well, I've coached a lot of people, so a lot of us are doing this. We're on a particular path that doesn't inspire us. And that was the birth of the inspired evolution. So I was inspired to evolve into following, a template or a blueprint, or uncover how I could potentially live my life in alignment with those that have inspired, like that I find inspiring. And so the podcast was birthed out of that. I've tried to keep it short, but it was a lot of discomfort, a lot of discomfort, that career misalignment, a lot of lack of meaning, a lot of lack of purpose. It was very painful for me at the time, emotionally, internally. And I look at it now as an existential crisis. And, the word inspired has the word to infuse spirit into something, right? So when you're out of spiritual alignment, your awareness for this lifetime is aware of one life. Yeah. Verdict's still out if we have multiple lives or not. I don't know. I'm not qualified to make that call. But spirit is such a big part of us. Yeah. And running against sort of what your spirit is here to put you to do, that friction is huge. No wonder I was depressed. No wonder I was anxious. No wonder I was feeling all that friction.
It's funny, we look at health, and you've made this link between health and purpose a few times. I've heard on other things. Maybe you could speak to that, because I think it's not necessarily obvious to people. They think, to be healthy, I have to eat well, I have to sleep well, I have to exercise. Maybe I meditate, do yoga. People, they're getting smart, they get the basics, and that's all true. But if all that was in place and you just hated what you did every day, you would still be unhealthy, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? So if you spend and I was that guy. I was totally that guy. Going to the gym, going to yoga, drinking my green smoothie. I was out on construction site eating acai bowls, like everybody else is eating sausage rolls and burgers and pies and stuff, right? I was doing all the things, ticking all my health boxes, if you will. And yet I was showing up 8 to 12 hours a day, hating what I was doing. And when you think about the emotional charges that you carry, and now there's lots of research on this now. I've got a podcast later today with Dr. John Demartini on grief, and he talks about how he's done research grief actually locks down your body. There's actually toxicity that enters your organs when you're holding grief, or this anger, this angst, this unsettledness. Your emotions actually are a big part of your health. Your emotional health is a big part of your health, right? And if you're showing up for the majority of your waking hours, the majority, 8 to 12. You sleep 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. Not if you're a newborn parent like us. But that's that, so from that place, how can you possibly feel like you're radiant, you're vibrant, your vital self when you're doing something you absolutely hate? And yeah, you're absolutely on it. The message in my heart is that your health is your purpose, and your purpose is your health. And, I thought I was carrying this message on my own for quite some time on this journey of the Inspired Evolution. But as you will, weekly interviews, things evolve and more things enter your awareness. And I came to realize that actually this is an ancient principle in the Hindu Vedic philosophy. They talk about the whole science of Ayurveda, which is, yoga is a part of that. Yeah. It's this massive science of Ayurveda, which is how you should eat, how you should move, how you should be with the nature, how you should be with the cycles, what is your makeup, what is your archetype, all this sort of stuff. All of that, the whole science of health is built around your dharma, and dharma is your purpose. And all of that is to say, hey, you want to be healthy so that you can fulfill your life's mission.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not on your life's mission, I love stress. People find this really weird. I go, I love stress. Stress is your free life coach. Because you're not on your life's mission. So you're getting unhealthy. And then stress can course correct you and say, hey, something's off, but we don't listen. We don't pause. We take another coffee, another 2 coffees, smash down some pills, keep powering on into the wrong direction.
So I might interrupt sometimes. I hope you don't mind, because like me, you tend
please do.
Yeah. I mean, you say about your makeup. My makeup's on point, obviously, but I mean, I like stress is your life coach. So when you have stress, something's telling you, isn't it? Hey, something's wrong here. Something's wrong. And I've also noticed when I'm on purpose with what I'm doing, I've got loads of energy. Yeah. I've got loads of energy spiritually, just internally, but also like last night, I had a bath on time, went to bed on time, got up and meditated, went for a walk, went to the gym. Why did I do all that stuff? Because I knew I had a full-on day today, but I knew it was a day that I really wanted to do. So I've got that motivation there to do all the other physical stuff. So you're actually kind of getting that on two levels, right? You're getting it direct from the source, but it's also orientating all the other stuff.
I believe so. And I would like to, I've obviously the word inspired means a lot to me because I named the whole the altar at which I pray every day. Inspired evolution, right? But what you're describing to me just sounds a lot more like inspiration than motivation. And inspiration is when something pulls you forward, like drives you forward from the inside. Yeah, motivation is you're pulling yourself along. Like I can listen to motivational tapes and get myself to the gym and do an epic workout. And then, an hour later, I'm sitting there on the couch again and I'm just trying to have my dinner and I'm like not as motivated. Motivation pumps up your tires. Yeah. But inspiration actually fuels you from the inside out. And a lot of the stuff that you describe, like when you're living in alignment, flow seems to happen a lot more. Yeah, like you're on this, that's one of my major trainings is on meta flow, which is, there's micro flow, like you can hack yourself to design flow states in your day. And, Flow Research Collective, Stephen Kotler, and, multiple podcasts with them. That's great. But meta flow, like getting your life on a big scale into alignment, the flow that comes, like opportunities that arise, it's just like, I'm not destined for that. And it's like, yes, you are. And it's like, but what? Like, that's a bigger opportunity than I ever imagined. And things start to line up, just like in your day. The inspiration, when it guides you and drives you, energy arrives. Where does it come from? It's a great question, right? Where does it come from?
It's interesting, like how things line up, like and the way it can feel like just I feel like compelled to do this, like I need to do this, like so I felt about the Ukraine project we did last year. And even how things in your life line up, like I'm going across the border with a load of medicines for a children's hospital that we've sourced. Let's just say, how can I put this? We've sourced the medicines creatively using people. And I'm there and I look at my mate and we both used to be dodgy geezers. And this is the first time we've done a drugs run for good. We haven't done anything dodgy. And we looked at each other and went, this is a bit illegal. This also could get us in a lot of trouble. He's like, yeah, but it's not the first time, is it? And then we laughed. And we laughed so much because we saw that our lives had sort of aligned us to be doing this thing that we were perfectly qualified for.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of humor in that. And there's a flow in that, as you say, like.
Absolutely.
Like the right people at the right time doing the right thing.
And that's one of my favorite quotes is a Steve Jobs quote. He said this close to when he was coming to pass. And he said, your life feels like a constellation when you're living it. Like it feels like this epic constellation. Like there's a star here and there's a thing going on over here and there's a thing going on over here. Like he randomly stepped into a calligraphy course while he was at university. He was gate crashing someone else's course while he was meant to be attending one of his own courses. He was just, and that particular course was all on type font, like sans, serif, all this sort of stuff, and then when he produced the iPod, you remember the first iPod was just this pure white sort of slate and all it had on it was text. And he looked back and goes, that one class that wasn't my class that I gate crashed in on taught me so much about how human behavior and responds to, like how humans respond to text and the importance of it, that was just what he needed on his journey for that piece of creation. And he looks back and he says, it feels like a constellation, all these random sporadic things happening, right? Like your past, and then now you're doing a run for good. And then it's like, but when you sit back and look back on your life, you will start to realize it was deadpan, a straight line. It's an absolute straight line.
With that and purpose generally, so I've worked with purpose a lot, you love the topic. Do you think we just sort of create meaning after the event because we're storytelling animals, or so the American coaches often have this kind of like, God has a plan just for you, and it's got a very sort of evangelical kind of Christian feel to it, even if they're atheists, the people who are saying it, because it's in the American culture, and a lot of the purpose coaching work comes from there. And then I guess there's a sort of more agnostic way of looking at it, Like, hey, maybe there's some kind of alignment. It feels that way. And I feel better and act clearer when I kind of go with that. Or is it all just meaningless bullshit and we're just putting our kind of stories on it? Like on different days, I don't know where I stand on that one. Where do you stand?
Yeah. I stand exactly where you stand, brother. I love that, because what's going on is, and this is the human condition, right? We live with a mind that is in this duality, like the reality of duality, right? And the Indians called this Maya. They call it an illusion because there's night and day, there's light and dark, when our truth is that we are one, right? But when I can say that to you, but when you listen to that, some part of you checks out and goes, what? I have no direct, tangible experience that we are one, right? And your spirit knows that, but your mind doesn't necessarily know that, right? So what you're asking me is like, do we have preordained destiny and meaning in our life? And that's the sort of evangelical perspective. Then you've kind of got the NLP perspective, which is on the nth degree, which is like, you are a meaning-making machine and you will derive meaning of everything. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop doing it. Like, just relax all the meaning that you're creating and just be the slate and watch yourself, like, neurolinguistically reprogram yourself. Like, and both are true. Yeah. On a spiritual level, like, I look at, you've got a kid, and I look at my kid now and I'm like, where did you come? Like, where did you come from? Like, I just don't get it, and touch wood, I've got friends who have tried for kids and not had them. Yeah. And so it's a blessing that not everybody gets, right? And touch wood, I'm very, aware of that because it happened to one of my closest friends. And so I'm looking at this happen and I'm like, okay, was that, like, I can derive meaning from it or not derive meaning from it, but it does seem to be that there is some sort of force at play that's greater than me. It's very humbling for me.
People, I say, like, look, let's just pretend for a bit your life isn't a complete meaningless waste of time. Let's imagine, let's act as if there was a plan. Because it can get, if people have too much of that, there's a special purpose just for me, it can get quite narcissistic, can't it? It can also get like nothing can get in the way of me and God's plan,
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the ego, right? And that's why developing a healthier relationship with your ego. So a spiritual purpose, generally will keep you quite humble. There'll be lots of knocks and challenges along the way that will knock you off your perch again and again and again, but you watch yourself grow and you feel yourself grow and you're like, I'm becoming a more well-rounded human rather than just a successful human in one direction. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because your ego generally drives for success in one direction is what I found. So it may just push for, like, academic success. It may just push for business success. It may just push for corporate career success. But what happened to your family? These are all the different archetypes. But if you can find yourself more well-rounded, that's you tapping into your spirituality and living more whole, more fully.
Right. As opposed to, I've made a lot of money, but my health's destroyed and my family life's destroyed. And
well, I'm on to my fourth marriage.
Yeah. This week.
And I'm not saying that, some people, like, I'm not advocating people need to stay in marriages, but 4 people have committed themselves to you through this lifetime. And this is, I can't say this like blanket, but something might be up, bro. Like, 4 people committed themselves to you, but don't want to be with you once they get to know the real you.
You get one free, I reckon. You get one free. But it's like the set, if you get married at 16, you get to make a mistake. But on the 4th one, you gotta go, what's the common factor here?
Yeah.
And do you think purpose can be dangerous? So I'm a big fan of purpose, see what it does to my own drive, everything from energy levels to attractiveness to women, to everything, just across the board. Bottom line, all of that. But also, I look at pictures of me in Ukraine, huge smile on my face. Everyone's like, aren't you in a war zone? I'm like, yeah, fucking love it. I'm well on purpose. Just smiling away, low energy. Can't feel
right. And that's the health and vitality. That
everyone's like, why do you look so happy? I'm like, because I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. But then it's also like, I've definitely driven myself to burnout from purpose. Sometimes I get the impression like the muse doesn't give a shit about you. Like, she will burn you up and spit you out. And I've seen people take that, driven by their purpose, to just
let's go there.
Is that the case? Because I sort of I'm playing devil's advocate here a bit.
Yeah.
Generally, I'd kind of say it's the best thing ever.
I'll share with you my awareness of what happens generally in those spaces, having coached like over 200 people on this path now. It happens, it does happen. What I find is actually happening, and I can relate to this myself, right? So be the first person to say this has happened to me, is you feel into your purpose, you find your alignment, you're doing something you absolutely love. Yeah, and you're on, like you are just 100% on, like you've described. You're in the middle of a war zone, and you just can't wipe the smile off your face. You're like, I am alive, like, right? This is what I was put here to do. Then generally, what happens shortly after is, and this is just part of being in this reality, the ego clicks in, right? The ego takes over and goes, oh, amazing. I'm doing something amazing. I'm that person. I'm
Right.
having that impact.
Look at
I'm
me.
successful. Look at me
Yeah,
go. I
yeah.
figured it out. I figured it out. I figured it out. And as soon as you start going, I, the ego's in. Yeah. And so from that point, the ego's like, okay, now I've got an identity. A big part, like all personal development is these days to me now, is just a game of identity politics with myself. Yeah. Listen to that again. Just allow it to sink in. Personal development is just a game of identity politics with yourself, right? And so once you've done something that connects, or your spirit is coming through, your ego will likely attach to it and build an identity around that, going, I'm that person now, check me out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now you've got to live into that identity, and then your ego takes control. And now you're like, boom, you're back into like, okay, cool. Like I've got to do all these things, and I've got to keep up. I've got to maintain. I've got to be Mr. Inspired Evolution, change the world.
You've got the same workload, but you just changed your fuel to 1-star petrol from the 5-star you had before.
It's natural. It's natural. It happens to all of us.
How do you avoid that
right?
then? Like, how do you avoid that kind of hijacking of purpose?
You're not going to love the response. It's going to happen. Just having the awareness that, hey, that's going to happen. I'm going to do something from the good of my heart. And over some time, because unless you're enlightened, I've met some people that are they just continue to stay connected to their heart, and they're just pouring from that place. For the rest of us muggles, as I'll call us, right? You pour from your heart, and then every now and then your head goes, wow, I did that, and it's great to acknowledge yourself. I'm definitely not saying don't, right? But there's a massive journey from the head to the heart. And when you notice your head starts to kick in, because what happens is you're pushing rather than allowing more. Yeah. And things will start to feel a little bit harder after a while. And like you said, and you described that perfect. It feels like burnout. It's like, I was doing so well in this space, and now like things aren't moving, things aren't flowing. I'm feeling depleted, right? As within, so without. Things aren't working. What's going on? And it's happened to me in the Inspired Evolution. Like I've gone down a particular path, something amazing's been emerging, and then I've gone to push for it really hard, and then realized, oh, I'm pushing super hard. And then the realization is like, come back, consolidate, take it easy. And what does the Inspired Evolution really want to emerge in the next sort of phase? And that looked like, initially we were just going ham on seminars, and that was amazing. It was incredible. I loved it so much. And then it was like, I'm the seminar guy, and like getting in front of rooms, like 1,600 people, just smashing it, like I was loving it. And then so much energy, touch wood. And then, at some point it wasn't ticking, it wasn't flowing. And I was just like, what is going on? And it was just like, thankfully, COVID happened, and I was like, I had to surrender the seminar aspect of things, and I was forced to pivot. But also, coaching started to open up, and one-on-one high-ticket coaching started opening up, and I was just starting to help people really deeply, intimately with what was coming on. And I was like, oh my God, this is flowing now, right? And then it started to flow.
Looking for what's easy, what isn't hard work in that way. Let's talk about the Inspired Evolution podcast a little bit, because you've had some fucking great guests. Like, really, I don't know. I actually said to your social media person that earlier today, I was trying to get in touch with you ahead of this, and I said, how do you get your guests? You've had some, who stands out for you? Like you've had some big names, and also just some really interesting people.
Yeah, oh man, after 6 years of podcasting, one of the philosophies that brought me to podcasting, or I've carried my whole life, actually used to be even in my CV, which is a bit weird, but every person's a book from which at least you could take a page. Some you'll take a chapter. Every person, even the person sitting on the side of the road that's, and I'll say the word just, pardon me for that, but, the person sitting on the side of the road that most people would just walk past. Yeah. That is, begging and homeless. Sit, have a chat with them. You'll learn some shit. Yeah. And the person that's obviously running a country, you'll learn something from them. So the one of the podcasts that has stood out for me again and again and again over time was Marianne Williamson. Yeah, she was huge for me. We've had some really like incredibly, like you said, guests of all sorts of prominence on the podcast, yourself included. And in there with Marianne Williamson, one of the big things that came through was she's a spiritual teacher that ran for president of the United States.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah,
Huh?
as a female, right?
Yeah,
like, and I'm just going to call it like as a female.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's never been a female president. And it's just like, just watching like just her journey and her stepping up and just watching the sort of dragons sort of rear their heads in these debates and how just her spirit sort of just carried her through it. And then eventually she bowed out. And right after she bowed out, we had this conversation, and we started talking about the masculine, feminine energies in terms of, she is of a feminine archetype, right? And so in there, it's like the feminine is like nurturing. And it's like, this is not nurturing for me. And so she bowed out, but her masculine friends were like, go for it. Just even those nuances, but the big takeaway was love and power. Love and power. A lot of what I'm doing here today is driven by love. Yeah. It's like, I want people to live a beautiful life. Like that's, live the life you love, right? Just do it. If at the very least, love the life you live. Yeah. At the most, live the life you love. But on that journey, it's like we can, especially people that are my sort of makeup, they can fall into the trap of just love. And I'm not gonna say just love, but what I mean by that is love heals everything. Love will just do it all.
Yeah.
And while people are out there waging wars, you're just sitting on the couch, smoking a joint, hanging out, watching stoner flicks, thinking that love will solve all your problems. Yeah. And it will. Yeah. But this is what she said. She goes, hey, love without power is anemic. And power without love is toxic. And we see plenty of the toxicity around us, right? We can see it. The corruption, the scandals, all the things, we can see it. And there's a lack of love, which I can see why people would be such massive advocates for love. But after having been an advocate for, the love on your path in your life for a while, I've noticed some of us soften. And there's a real call for you to step the fuck up. The way she puts it is you've got to wage peace. And that's been huge. Like I left that podcast feeling like an activist activated me.
Yeah. The power and love stuff. Paul Linden, one of my teachers, big on that in the somatic space. And is it Kane wrote a whole book on that. But yeah. Anyone else who sort of stood out that might be worth people looking up? Great episodes, or someone that left an impression? Or when we after the episode, we can bitch about who didn't live up to expectations. I mean, joking aside, it must be like meet your heroes is kind of a curse, isn't it?
Oh man, it's not really. sometimes, but only 10% of the times. Only 10% of the time, I would say.
Is it? Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time, the Inspired Evolution, I'm still pinching myself that I'm like inspired by this person, and we're having a conversation, and they're just doing it one-on-one with me. And the only catch is that I have to share this with the world, and me sharing it with the world builds a tribe and an audience around the ideas that I think are really important personally. Or my heart feels really important. It's just a trip. Podcasting is such a gift. Like it's ridiculous. Neil Donald Walsh is someone that I loved having on. Conversations with God.
No relation.
Just the grace with which he describes some really deep topics, but also some really basic topics like forgiveness. He makes them really basic, like these, like something like forgiveness was a big topic that we discussed. And he goes, hey, like in the mind of the master, there is no forgiveness. There's just pure understanding. And you hear something like that and you go, oh shit, I'm carrying around all these charges, wanting to forgive and asking other people to forgive me. But really, people are just doing the best they can in any given situation. I'm just not understanding their situation. And then you just start to feel empathy for them, and you just start to feel everything softens. There were like 12 nuggets like that in one episode. And we talked a lot about our path, our story, our evolution, where life itself is going. And he talked about, when he was quizzed, the question that you asked me before in terms of, what is our purpose in some way? His was, your purpose is not about you. Your life is not about you. No way. Your life is about all of those that you touch and impact. The minute you figure that out, you start to become non-attached, and you just start to walk through life a lot easier. You glide through it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really powerful episode. Greg Braden was on, Shafali Sabari on parenting. It had some amazing episodes, brother. Stephen Kotlev on flow has always been incredible. Yeah.
So yesterday I got somebody sent me, said, "Oh, you should check out this guy. He's really interesting." And 2 minutes later, he's booked onto the podcast to speak for an hour. And I was like, we're so lucky that we get to speak to just people give us their time,
It's insane.
We don't pay for it. Like people that would charge 10 grand for a coaching session, we just have to do a half decent interview.
That's what I just don't. I just, and I like people go, one of my courses is is like, hey, set up your own podcast, and this is how, you can help it thrive. On the back of that, we've got a small little media agency where we help conscious entrepreneurs publish their podcasts into the world and just make it easier for them too. Now, it's not 100% aligned with my calling. And in fact, let's just go there. It actually confuses the marketing around the Inspired Evolution, because the Inspired Evolution is all about leadership coaching. Now, what is this podcast and get your message thing out there in the world? It's important, absolutely. But it changed me so much. It gave me so much that it's just so instrumental on my path in terms of, like you said, you're getting coached every week by the best and brightest in the world. Like, it's gonna leave an impact on you, and they're willing to do it for they're willing to do it for free, as long as you've got an audience size. And you said the guest and the caliber of guests and the Inspired Evolution, and let's be real, like guys, it didn't just, I'm not someone special. Yeah, I just want to touch wood, just get that completely out of the gate. Like, I perceive myself as the dead weight in many ways. It's like, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
You're good, man. 6 years of practice. 6 years of practice.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, when I first started, I remember the first person I interviewed was my yoga teacher.
Uh-huh.
She was living life in alignment, and she'd just been on a sabbatical for a year. She came back, she left her corporate job, went on a sabbatical. She was my yoga teacher, and I had a chat to her. And I started with my local community, and I listened back to that episode actually more frequently than I care to admit. And I try not to cringe, because self-love is a whole thing I'm working on. But man, took me 15 minutes to ask a question. That episode went for almost 2 hours. And it was just like, you could tell this kid was just excited to just talk to someone he loved, and he was doing something new, and but he couldn't stop rambling.
Yeah, there's an art to it. I'm not sure I haven't got that good. I remember I said to one of my friends, acquaintances, who's a podcaster, and he's blown up the last couple of years interviewing Jordan Peterson and going on Rogan and stuff. And I sent him a message saying, "Hey, mate, I can see that you've got smarter over the last few years. So don't take this as an insult, but you're always pretty clever, but now he's sharp, man."
Yeah.
And he's thrown himself into it way more than I have. And this year we're going to get proper cameras. And I've been told by my team not have shitty lighting, and, actually take it really seriously, because I've just chatting to people. So I'm up in the game this year, listeners. You're going to hear better microphones and better cameras and all the rest of it. All right. So what else do I want to ask you about? A couple of things. Cultural background. So you're Sikh, Indian family, Aussie. Is that right?
Yeah. So my parents migrated from Punjab, which is, in India. And I grew up as a Sikh in Australia. That's my cultural background.
I know you talked about this a little bit about earlier, being kind of from Indian heritage. And, I noticed the personal growth industry is mostly Americans. A few Brits, a few Israelis. We might get an Aussie on the show, Australian, if we're lucky. And our audience, I've noticed it's growing in India. A lot of people speak beautiful English there, so it's not like, it's not a communication barrier. Big middle class growing. I'd love you to speak a little bit more to some of those cultural factors there. even from the Indian side or the Australian side? Because I think they're both kind
Yeah.
of understated to listeners.
Yeah, so it's there's quite a few bits of personal development that I've had to go through on my path and journey. There are elements of both cultures which have supported me to the nth degree, and also elements of both cultures which have hamstrung me in certain elements. I can speak to a couple. So growing up Sikh, yeah, so I don't want to conflate Sikhism with growing up in an Indian culture. So, but growing up Sikh was really powerful because, and still being Sikh, because you have this, the name of the faith, Sikh means to learn. In Punjabi, it's, Sikh means learn. Go on, that's your faith, to learn. Our name for God is Waheguru, which is teacher. So anything that can teach you is your God. Now, the beauty in that is if I stop to pause and reflect, an ant can teach me something, the piece of blade of grass can teach me something, the cosmos can teach me something, you can teach me something, there's God in you, Neil deGrasse Tyson can teach me something, there's God in him, so, there's God, this whole thing is God, right? And I think it just, for me, it was just a really easy place to sort of just settle into. I found that really, really, really supportive because it was like, yep, that feels about right. And when you start tuning into a lot of personal development, it's all about growth, and your life is here as an opportunity to grow, keep growing. If you're not learning, you're sort of decaying. So just keep growing, keep learning, keep evolving, So that it was easy to reconcile of a lot of what I saw. And I think the advantage that Sikhism had was it's only 500 years young.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that, it had the opportunity to sort of build upon other faiths, learn from other religions, and go, okay, this is what's working, this is not what's not working, and from here, this is what our spiritual calling is, right? So it didn't, and I still find it doesn't espouse miracles as much. Like it doesn't clash with science. And being an engineer by background, like science was this real big thing, especially when I grew up in, now I feel like people are still into science, but they're also open to the conversation, or there might be more. And maybe that's just the demographic that I'm in. But when I grew up, it was like science is the new religion, right? But Sikhism and science didn't clash with each other in any way. I found it was just really supportive. One said the same thing as the other, and I was like, this is really cool. Even the Big Bang, they sort of, you could find that wisdom in our holy scriptures. So that was really supportive. Growing up spiritual, and now I look at how much touchwood of my life is dedicated to spiritual entrepreneurship. It was an absolute gift. That's Sikhism, which, India gave birth to that faith in many ways. Now, one of the other things you'll find in India growing up in that culture is because there's so much population and there is so much poverty and there is so much pollution. One of the things is you find people front a lot. They're always fronting. Always fronting. The way I put it politely is they're trying to put their best foot forward, hoping that they'll lean into it and live that out, right? The worst part of it is, there's a culture around dishonesty, which is accepted.
So it'll be maybe someone has a nice car, but actually they don't have much of a home to speak of, or
no, and that's commonplace. Yeah, that's commonplace. So that the face that the world meets of you is much more polished than the insides of you, right? And that's like you said, like really nice car, but your home, doesn't live up to that standard, or you might be struggling financially, but you dress really well to try and get, and you're encouraged to do that in some ways because it's like you'll get the job, and then eventually you will have the things, So, I'm not here to demonize it, but there are places where, and that's what I like to put it as, you're encouraged to put your best foot forward consistently. Now, when you're putting your best foot forward, there's a whole body of work in there for you to actually accept yourself, to come home to yourself, and to build yourself up from where you are in a really robust way, and being honest with yourself. That was one of the challenges I had. That was at the nexus of my depression growing up, is I was dishonest with others, but I was that paled in comparison to the dishonesty that I was I was affording myself. Like I was kidding myself again and again, again and again, again and again, and in a completely depressed state. That was quite some time, like 6 years of depression. I don't wish it upon my worst enemy, which is why there's free meditations on the Inspired Evolution YouTube channel. It's like,
man, I've dipped in that.
Man,
6 years. It's
touch wood, like I don't wish it upon my worst enemy, and that's where the whole coaching thing started. I started as a meditation coach, just trying to help people with their depression, because meditation, they gave me pills, but I took my first one and realized I was buzzing and it was amazing. And then I realized, actually, I don't want to live life on a yo-yo and a roller coaster. And I literally just took the pills, threw them out, even though they felt so good. It was so amazing to just be back to normal for 4 hours. And then I was left with nothing but meditation over time, and mindfulness literally reconstituted my life, is the way I say that when I share it from stage. So there's that big element of the culture in India. Then you've got another cultural element in Australia, which I could speak to, which is there really is this tall poppy syndrome. There really is like this, don't step out. Like I feel like in the States, you're acknowledged for being an entrepreneur, for doing stuff that really is like, you think you're up, mate?
Bro, you think you're better than us?
Yeah, in Australia, there's this.
That's from England. That's from England.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. We inherited that.
Australians have it even more because the power hierarchy is so low there.
Yeah, and I also think the convict sort of mentality, it's like you all came across.
British. Yeah. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if it wasn't for America.
Yeah. Yeah, this not being allowed to reach beyond your station. Well, just and it's like when I say that, it's like, who said you can't? And I can hear that already, and it's like, yeah, but socially, the minute you start to you say little things, like you start trying new things, and people are like, oh, fuck that. And you're like, what?
Anyone who tries to do anything to change.
And you're like, yeah, nah.
You're on the building site with your special diet. I can imagine the other guys kind of taking the piss.
Dude, I remember a construction site. So I used to take my lunch 30 minutes to go for a run. Yeah. So I was literally just going, I'd get changed, go for a run, come back. And the guy, one of the guys, my, at the time, boss was like, you need to stop doing that. And I was like, what? And he's like, people are going to make fun of you, mate.
That's the worst thing ever. Socially conformist.
And I was just like, for what? For going for a run, optimizing my time. I'm here 12 hours of the day. I can't go to the gym. I got 30 minutes for lunch. I go for a run, smash my lunch. I'm back in 30 minutes. I'm not doing any, I'm doing what I need to do. You got an issue with me going for a run? And it's like, oh, people are going to make fun of you.
There's
and I remember just sitting there, just going let him make fun. Just do it. I just kept running, but just these things, they show up again and again in all these different places. So that's one of the big ones in the Aussie culture.
It's funny how social conformity, just one of the biggest things that holds us back, right? And in Indian culture, I've heard you talk, earlier about got to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, In Britain, it might be don't rock the boat, don't keep Japanese culture, social harmony. Even Australian culture you think of as quite rebellious, but actually there's that conformity factor there. I kind of want to get all my students just to draw a big cock on their heads and just walk around for a week with that, and just get when you get over that, you just
even okay, you don't have to walk around with a cock on you. It'd be a great experiment. But one of the things Tim Ferriss espouses in the 4 Hour Work Week, which I love that book, by the way, and talk about breaking through paradigms in your mind. He talked about just when you're walking down the street, just make eye contact with people and just watch how much it freaks them out. You're just making eye contact. And people just looking at you and they look away. Well, some people look at you and it's like, what's your problem? And it's like, nothing.
Listeners, don't do that in London. You'll get stabbed.
But this is the thing, right? What? What? Right? You can't make eye contact and just smile at people. I noticed when I first moved to Melbourne, because Melbourne's a big city compared to where I came from, Adelaide, people just weren't smiling. Adelaide people smile. And I was smiling at them. They looked at me I would get some smiles back. My hack was to try and get smiles back from people as I was walking down the street, just, to and from work. And there's just these, and one of the other pieces he goes, just walk into like a busy train station and just lie down on the floor.
Yeah, there's all these little social like
just lie down on the floor and just watch what happens, and people just like look at you and just watch what comes up for you. Like you will feel like
difficult.
Fuck, like I'm doing something really odd, and people are like, I can feel it, and it's like it's just your feeling. Some people don't even give a shit. You're just being weird in a weird place. Like, don't worry about it. But like all this stuff comes up for you, and so one of the really powerful ways that I've come to interface with this piece of wisdom is Fish and Lakiani Mindvalley, one of the organizations I support, help them build out their coaching programs and stuff, or their premium coaching program. So one of the key things that he talks about is the culture scape. He calls it the culture scape, and I love that word. I love that word because it describes culture as a landscape around you. Like you see the landscape, it's a physical thing. It's tangible. It's like, that's the landscape of this. When you start using the word culture scape, you see that it's like culture, landscape, the landscape of culture around you. You can start seeing it a bit more now that you've got that word. You see the, like, even just little things. I'll be sitting there in the train and, an old lady will be, I might be standing, someone might be sitting there, and they might be younger, a young male, right, sitting there. And this old lady walks in on the train, and every cell in my body is like, dude, get up. And I can feel it. There's a stress that starts in my diaphragm. It's like, it's wrenching. It's like, bro, respect your elders, get the fuck up, give her the seat. Now, that's my culture, right? I grew up with respect your elders. I look around now, some women actually get offended when you give up your seat for them.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's been really weird. Like, and that does my head in. I'm like, look, that's just who I am. That's my culture. But their culture is like, I'm just as empowered as you, man. And I'm like,
how dare you insult me with this assumed
like that's culture's at conflict, right? But for the young man, I don't know, he might be disabled. He might have some issues. He might have something going on. He might have stubbed his toe or something. Maybe he needs to be sitting. Maybe he's rolled his ankle. But my culture is creating this internal, and I can feel it. What is that feeling? If I had no culture, that feel. And so culture creates this emotional state, like again and again.
It's embodied. It's deeply embodied in people,
isn't it? It's insane, and it's the soup of your environment. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but one of the realizations that's coming through these days, I talked with Sonia Choquette. She talks about a third of your life is destiny, a third of your life is free will, and a third of your life is the environment that you're in, and that's the people and the places that you go. And I don't know how true it is, but I really like how she described it. Yeah, because a third of it is destiny. A third of it is that, your life is here for you and you've got a purpose. A third of it's free will and you will make meaning of it and go make the best meaning you can of it. And a third of it is we are social creatures. And the environment and the soup that we're playing in has a massive impact on who we are and who we become.
Boom. Let's finish with some quick fire questions. Never done this before. I'm just going to make them up. Let's go with, who would you like to fight? Just give me the name straight out of the bag. Just physically fight who?
Oh, if I could go back in time, I'd just like to just punch Hitler in the nose above his little mustache.
Way too easy. Way too easy. All right, when your baby grows up, do you want it to be a lawyer or a doctor?
Neither. I wanted to be an engineer.
An engineer, like it was in there. It was in there. I knew it. It was in there deep down.
Social programming at its hardest. I did it. You did it. No, whatever he wants, man. Whatever he wants. I'm excited. I think he'll be a musician. Touchwood, looking at how much. Let's see what comes out.
Good luck. Good luck. Wish him all the best. And what are you scared of right now?
What I'm scared of is, well, actually, the biggest thing is death.
It's honest, man.
I had a dear friend who lost his partner to suicide very recently, and it's been quite confronting for both of us.
It's really hard to lose people to suicide, particularly. I've been through that one. Just trying to think how I can pull this podcast back now. It's an important one.
You can opt to leave that in there, or you can opt to edit it out.
I don't edit anything. I ain't got time.
Yeah.
What would be your message to someone who was contemplating suicide?
It's hard because I've spent some time recently thinking about what that mindset must be like to be in that space, and for the life of me, I can't connect to it. But I can just feel how dire that situation must be. To the point where, yeah, like speaking to certain people, because being as a podcaster, you've got access to therapists and counselors and all sorts of professionals all across the world, actually. And one of them said, one of what someone said to me was like, it's actually really interesting. You're looking at it as an unfortunate instance, but for that particular person, that was their moment. Like that was the first time they ever felt in control. And it's like, that is like, my brain just doesn't, that just doesn't, it feels icky to hear that. Like, it's just like, wow, man. So yeah, from my privileged position, what I would say is please reach out, have a chat. There are so many people willing to have a chat. I'm not sure if it helps because I don't know what that situation's like. But for me, talking has helped so much with so many things. Again and again, it sounds so simple, but like just being heard and listened to, and just having someone talk to you through things. It's what the whole coaching, the Inspired Evolution is. Everything. It's about the, like, we go to really deep places, really, really, really deep places, intimate places where people. Oftentimes, I'm learning from them as they're learning from me, and yet they're the ones that are paid for coaching. But the willingness to sort of go there around things is really.
Sorry. Yeah, just saying, I'm glad you made it through your 6 years of depression, and glad I made it through mine. Kind of feel like someone in the future is glad you didn't kill yourself. And it's I'm certainly glad you do what you do. You've got some awesome stuff. People want to check it out. InspiredEvolution.com, right?
That's right. Yeah. So InspiredEvolution.com. If you're looking for Amrit, it's Amrit.coach. You'll find me there online as well. So InspiredEvolution.com for all things podcast, and Amrit.coach for all things coaching. But please go check out the YouTube channel, Inspired Evolution. YouTube.com/Inspired Evolution. Episodes every week. I love doing them, and they're just like this. Check out the episode with Mark as a place to start. It's a really good conversation. Yes.
I already sent that to people now. It's one of my top 3 podcasts I send to people.
Yeah.
So you made the grade. Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate you.